Hello everybody, welcome back to the Contrarian. For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Logan. I really like to talk about the markets and investing, and most of all investing in such a way that outperforms the majority of other investors in the long term. And frankly, this last year has been somewhat difficult for me in doing this methodology because it has been somewhat disappointing in the areas that I have invested in, and this is nothing new. Investing in this way typically works like this, where you see something that you think is going to work out within a certain time frame, and then it takes much longer than you initially thought it would. And that has definitely been the case for gold and silver in the last year. It has definitely been a strange scenario where all of the fundamental reasons of why gold and silver should rally have essentially played out, if not almost exceeded what my expectations were for them, and yet the metals themselves haven't rallied, and more so just the crowd of investors have not gotten behind them yet as a sort of inflationary hedge type of play. So because of that, gold and silver and precious metal miners have been some of the most underperforming stocks in the last year. And this is somewhat difficult, but I will now lay out the case of why I'm still very bullish on all of these sectors that I just talked about: gold and silver and precious metal miners. These have to do with three primary reasons: fundamentals, technicals, and sentiment. And I'll get into the fundamentals first off, as this is likely what everyone has been hearing about. And this has to do with the fact that the Federal Reserve and Congress have spent money like crazy in the last 1.5 years in response to the pandemic, both on the fiscal side in terms of giving ever more increasing benefits, and on the monetary side of expanding just the monetary supply. So both of these do contribute majorly to inflationary pressures, especially the fiscal side of monetary expansion, which definitely makes its way into the economy more quickly. We really didn't see a whole lot of fiscal stimulus up until the pandemic, at which point we really had never seen these kinds of direct payments to consumers before, up until the pandemic, or at least the extremely large extent that all of the welfare programs were extended. But that will definitely continue to create more and more inflationary pressures. We recently had a much higher than expected producer price index come out just this week, and the consumer price index came out last week, and that was about what was expected. But consumer price index was about 6.8% year over year, and PPI, I believe, was about 9.6% year over year. So all of those are at near 40-year highs, which does bode very well for gold and silver and precious metal miners, especially given where interest rates are right now, and they are at extreme historic lows for where inflation is, and that puts the real rates in extremely negative territory. And so we could even see a moderate bond rally in the 10 and 30 year, and yet real rates would still be very negative. And that is really what has given gold rocket fuel in the past, in terms of looking at past time periods when gold has really outperformed. It has been when negative real rates have been in really negative territory, and that is where we are right now. So these essentially are the fundamental reasons why I expect gold and silver to eventually break out of their consolidation that they are in right now. Obviously, these same reasons were present about a year ago even, so it does, it doesn't really provide a time frame for when this could happen, but it's almost a case of, when this does finally begin to be priced into these stocks and metals out there, that I do finally think that this will begin to be factored in, and that these will cause significant rallies from here. Now getting into the technicals, both the gold and silver technical charts are very bullish. Essentially, there was a large rally after the initial sell-off that occurred in March and April of 2020. Right after that, there was a significant rally for both gold and silver. Silver reached a high of around $30, gold reached a high of around $2,100, and then since then they've both been in consolidating ranges, and essentially consolidation is just moving backwards, back testing where moving back from the highs that these metals reached, and that's what is called as a bull flag. Now, gold and silver have been in this pattern for quite some time now, over a year. And it's almost the case of the longer you are in this kind of a consolidation period, you can almost expect more upside on the side coming out of it, just because there's been so much neglect in just people becoming ever more bearish of these sectors, especially when so many other things and basically everything else outside of gold and silver has done very well in the last year. It's almost the case of where just because of that, sentiment becomes increasingly negative on everything that's just underperforming so dramatically, kind of what like gold and silver and miners have done in the last year. And this ties in with my last point of sentiment, which is basically the lowest it's been in the entire last year for both gold and silver right now. Just with these stocks and these metals being so underperforming compared with everything else in the last year, people are just running away from them. There's the narrative that's been out there for a while that cryptocurrencies are somehow replacing gold and silver as a safe haven asset or as a inflationary hedge. Now, cryptos have definitely done well in the last year, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll do well in the future. And so I would almost expect that if cryptos were to, say, experience a continued bear market going into this coming year, that could almost produce a group of people who are still wanting to look for an inflationary hedge, but who are no longer really interested in the cryptocurrency space. So that might add a little bit of extra buying power into gold and silver. And then there's obviously the side of the industrial uses for silver especially, which could provide some upside in the future. But obviously sentiment does come in cycles, but it's almost the case of with gold and silver, we're kind of at an extreme low right now in terms of sentiment, in terms of investor optimism and mainstream optimism out there right now for gold and silver. And that, in a way, provides a great buying opportunity to get in before people do realize these other factors, which I've already talked about, of the fundamental case for gold and silver, how they have always been an inflationary hedge, and also the technical reasons. So all this being said, I'm not trying to provide any sort of financial advice in terms of these reasons for why I am currently invested in precious metal miners mainly. I'll just briefly talk about positions I have right now. Mainly they are in the junior ETFs, which track the gold and silver miners. So that would be like the GDXJ and the SILJ ETFs. I chose these ETFs. I usually try to avoid ETFs because of there's usually better companies you can find out there in the individual space, but I basically most of the companies in these ETFs, I've looked at their fundamentals and I think they're definitely solid companies. I chose the ETFs because I wanted to get some diversification in this space. Obviously, with choosing individual companies, that comes with a lot more risk, especially in the gold and silver miners space. These companies do come with a bit more risk than some other companies out there, just in the fact that up until recently, the management has been a bit sloppy. The earnings have not always been there, and cash flow has definitely always been questionable. Up until recently, of course, when with the rally that gold and silver have had, these companies have turned into practically money printers in a good way. And so with that, I just chose to go with these ETFs, which give a lot more diversification within gold and silver miners, but that still provide a lot of upside in my opinion. So that's just how I am positioned myself in the space of gold and silver. I do expect this coming year, 2022, to hopefully finally begin to see the effects of what I've been talking about, people finally kind of coming to their senses. And 2021 has been somewhat of a strange year throughout the markets as a whole, I would say. But yeah, obviously I do not know what this coming year will bring, but that is how I'm currently positioned right now, at least in the gold and silver space. So all of that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, just give it a thumbs up. If you did not enjoy it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why down in the comments, and I hope to see you again at some point.